Hi, everybody. I'm Steph. I'm an alcoholic. That is, sadly, my husband. Yeah. Right, the back and forth. You'd think we were married for 30 years, the way I feel. But it's only been a couple. I think a year, actually. We've lived together for 4. Woo! So I didn't think that would happen 8 years ago. I didn't think I'd get married. Especially not to such a gem. Aww. You guys don't pick up on sarcasm real well, do you? I'm coming up on 8 years in October, which is exciting and not a place I ever thought I would be. I'll start out by saying I really do love AA. It is a part of my life, not in the same way it is for him. Everybody's a little different. I found my place. I sort of wear it loosely. I'm not at a meeting every single day in my life. I was in the first couple of years, and that's what kept me sober. I go occasionally. I do service. I speak. I help other women in their early days and years. My best friend actually just got sober because I stuck around in AA, and because I was sober, she came to me. Her mother died. She was an active alcoholic. So to be able to be sober and help her get sober using AA is like, that was my wedding gift from her. And that is like, it gives me shivers to know that I could give that to her and she could give it to me. And it's only because I stuck around, and it's only because I kept AA in my life that I got to see her actually get a life back. So I'll start at the beginning. Experience, strength, and hope, they say. I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old. And I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, and I was adopted by super waspy, Upper East Side Manhattan, very fancy people, or outwardly very fancy, not really. My mom's Australian. And at a very young age, and you hear this a lot from addicts and alcoholics especially, I felt really uncomfortable. I felt like I didn't fit into this world. All the girls, it seemed to me, my perception of them was that they were downy and blonde and pretty and perfect, and I felt big and ugly and brunette and not a part of. And actually, when we used to go out to Southampton, we had all that kind of life, and I went to a prep school, and I hated it. I separated myself because I felt so different. I gave myself a bad girl identity really young because I felt so different, and I didn't want anyone to label me. I was going to label me. I was going to give myself the label before anyone else could. Anyway, going back when I was like 5 years old, we used to go to this like beach club and all these downy little kids. This was the 80s, named Bo and Blair. And I'm stiff. None of it worked. And they would do these beach walks, and we would all hold a rope to go into the ocean and learn how to swim in the ocean. And I was terrified. I was fear-filled. I wouldn't learn how to ride a bike, and I certainly wouldn't go, even holding a rope, into the ocean. Because the fear held me back, and the feeling different held me back from doing the things with the other girls. And as I got older, I would sit in the locker at the club, and I would wear a black sweater and black jeans in the middle of summer and chain smoke. I just didn't want to be a part of. And fear, I was already so filled with fear and anxiety all the time. And I see that more looking back. I didn't understand what I was feeling at the time, but it was constant anxiety. It was like I don't know, some of you are too young to remember the old gas stoves, and they always had a pilot light lit in them, and then they would flare up when you turned up the gas on the top of the stove. And I lived with a pilot light of anxiety right in the pit of my stomach, always. And it would flare up, and it flared up more and more easily as I got older. So by about 10 or 11, my mom sort of was very interested in appearances at that point in my life, and she wanted me to be thinner. The doctor thought I should be thinner, so she started restricting food, and that's really when my first addiction began, and it was to food. And so by 11 years old, I was stealing money from my parents. When they were sleeping, I would go into their room and take money out of my dad's wallet. And I was stealing money so I could buy food and binge, secretly. It kept going, and it quickly became alcohol. I'm not one of those people who remembers her first drink. I'd always had alcohol in my house. So I'd been able to sip, and like I'd go and finish the drinks. If my parents had a lot of parties, I'd go and finish the drinks when the grown-ups went to dinner. So it wasn't like, oh, thank God I found it. But it did do something. It made me feel like I fit in immediately. I relaxed. The anxiety, the pilot light felt like it had gone out, and I felt like I fit in. So I didn't want to fit in with the downy bows and blairs of my prep school. So I quickly made friends with really men. They were 18 or 19. I was 13 or 14, who, I don't know if you know the city at all, but I would take off my little school uniform at the end of the day. I'd put on baggy Gerbeau jeans. This is early 90s, Carhartts. Put my hair up on my head, tight, dark purple lipstick, crushed bamboo earrings. And I would head up to 135th and Lenox. And I just want to point out the pants I'm wearing. This is the culture I grew up in, right? These pants. But I would just change my identity, and I would head up to 135th and Lenox, and I would drink with guys up there. So I was drinking 40s of Old E, brown paper bag, pouring a little out for my homies. Like, do I look like I came from a neighborhood where, like, people were being needlessly shot and I needed to pour a little out for my... Like, I didn't understand. I was pretending to be something I wasn't, around people who this really meant something to. But I so desperately needed a group with whom I felt comfortable. And so there was Cisco. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Cisco. It was called, we jokingly called it crack juice because, woo, it was like cheap port, and it came in these little round bottles, and it fucked you up fast. And it was a good mix with a 40. Think Jägermeister, but cheaper. And grosser, if that's possible. That was like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Now that I'd found alcohol, I felt more comfortable in my own skin. And I started to become willing to hang out with the prep school girls, too. So I fell in with them, and I still had my uptown crowd, and I was sort of a chameleon. Like, I could go in and out of all the scenes. I would dress the part. Everything about me would change depending on where I was, the way I spoke, the way I walked. When I was uptown, I actually walked like an OG. I was like, but look at, it's totally not me, right? But anything to fit in. I would just, adapt my entire self to fit in and to feel wanted and to feel enough. I just remembered this recently. I wanted so badly to fit in with the prep school kids towards the end of high school that I would steal money from my parents and buy the guys baseball caps so that they'd like me. This was a time when you still wore, some of you will remember, they kept the tags in their caps. It was the beginnings of hip hop. I get it, we all wanted to be a part of, but I took it to the extreme. I was I'm gonna be hardcore, And it worked. I was a chameleon. I would go to the bars on the Upper East Side with the girls, and then I would, ditch them and go uptown. And there was a lot of ditching people, sort of early on ghosting, just not showing up here. I'll meet you at that bar and heading somewhere else. Anyway, so that was weekend drinking. I'd found it. I had my thing. I was good. It wasn't too out of hand. I wasn't blacking out yet. I went to college. I chose a school probably beneath my level of intelligence, but I wanted to be close to the city, close to my drinking buddies. I wanted to be able to get in to get drugs in case there weren't any on campus. Of course there are some on campus. So school was really easy for me. I didn't really go to classes. I started drinking almost every night of the week. And then my hangovers started probably my late teens, early 20s, and I drank enough that they were painful. And I wasn't someone who used hair of the dog. I punished myself with my hangovers. They were painful. It was like pores the size of my nostrils, that sort of weird, dry, smelly sweat coming out of everything, bright red, I look like I'm going to pop at any minute. Yeah, it was just bad. I started gaining a lot of weight because finally out from under my mom, like I was like, ah! Everything went crazy. Chain smoking, cocaine, a lot more cocaine in college, a lot of ditching friends there too to go buy the drugs. Lost a lot of friends along the way because I was sort of a part-time friend in the end. A lot of the other behavior really started more hardcore in school that, you know, I don't need to say much more, but caused a lot of shame as a woman, made me very uncomfortable. But, you know, get enough drinks in me, I was fun. At the end of college, my father dies. And, you know, you hear some people talk about crossing a line in their alcoholism when it goes from, like, party hard drinking to daily hardcore drinking. And that's the line. I'm pretty sure I used his death as an excuse to sort of amp it up. Like, I was ready to go to be a daily drinker. So I used it. I got a job right out of college. And my boss is, I will diagnose her, an alcoholic. She is to this day. She actually came to my wedding and is still drinking pretty hard. But that was great. Because she and I would go for liquid lunches and, you know, we'd go drinking after work. She was someone who was able to, like, have 2 or 3. At the end of the day, she'd go home. That was enough for her to get drunk. Not me. So every night I was out till 2 or 3 drinking alone at the dive bars in the neighborhood. Soon enough, I couldn't make it through the day at work without drinking, so I would start at lunch with a Mountain Dew. And I'd filled it half with vodka, and I'd sip on that throughout the day, because how am I going to deal with people if I'm not drunk? That was a big thing. Like, I didn't know until I got sober how uncomfortable other people made me. Like, how terrified I was of, like, just people. Like, I thought everyone was judging me. I thought, like, nobody liked me, really. Like, I had to drink just to feel like I was likable. So daily drinking, life's getting worse and worse. I'm getting fatter and fatter. Everything's bad. The binging's out of control. Binge eating's out of control. The binge drinking is out of control. I'm drinking all the time. I'm miserable. So I think, what will fix this? How can I change? So I got a boyfriend, because men make everything better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That sarcasm thing you guys have trouble with, right? So I find a man, I take him hostage. He is not a drinker. He's a Scottish guy who's not a drinker. He drinks something called a shandy, which is half beer and half lemonade. Why even drink it? Like, why are you drinking at all? What's the point? And it's like it would get the condensation because he'd go through like half of it. Meanwhile, I've like, 6 shots and 12 drinks. I'm going. I would sneak away from him to go buy cocaine so I could keep drinking basically on my own. This poor man, I really took him hostage into my life. Now, I mean, he's a little to blame. Like, he should have dumped my ass pretty quickly, right? But he didn't. He couldn't do better. Fat, drunk, barely able to function. Me. So that's not fixing it. Weird. He totally didn't fix everything. My life didn't automatically get better because I had a boyfriend. So I was like, so what do I do next? How can I fix myself next? And I thought, moving. Moving is the solution. I gotta move somewhere where they don't really drink. That'll help. So I take him to Scotland. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to any parts of Britain, Great Britain, but they drink. They drink a fuckload. Like, it's different, kind of, because, like, a lot of stuff closes at midnight, but, man, can they drink. And a lot of them could keep up with me. I got a job pretty quickly there. I was always able to. I was good at sort of being phony. Like, I could be smiley and happy and upbeat enough to get the job. And I could hold on to it because the truth was, I was so ashamed and miserable on the inside that I excelled at my job. I pushed harder than anyone else because anything to get over that shame. Like, I had to prove something. So, needless to say, Scotland didn't fix me. The drinking changed a little. It was nightly. I would like run across the moors at 10 o'clock because I thought one bottle of wine would do it. Turned out, I needed 2 more before the liquor stores closed. So literally running across like hills to get my wine. So anyway, nothing's getting better. At one point I throw myself down the stairs like to get a tent. It's like that. Create your own drama. Create chaos. When there wasn't enough chaos, I created more. And I was like, this isn't working. I'm not. No. So I left him there. I was like, bye. I'm leaving. You get to stay with your family. Basically, I ghosted him, right? I was like, out. I'm out. Came back to New York. I was like, fresh start. This is going to fix everything. I'm back. Literally, the day I got off the plane, I went to my old haunts, drank, got cocaine, engaged in some of the other behavior twice in the same night. So bad. So the next morning, I woke up, and the hangover was like it is, but maybe worse than ever. I felt like I couldn't move from my bed. I felt paralyzed by it, and I was suddenly very afraid of where this was going, and nothing was changing. And I'd been in and out of therapy trying to fix myself my whole life, and at one point, a therapist had given me the book Living Sober and the book The Power of Now. And at the time, I was like, what the fuck are these for? Clearly, I'm living in the now. So I had put them on my bookshelf. That morning, the next morning, when I woke up, I'm actually an atheist, so you don't need to believe in a supernatural higher power to do this. It is preferable. I'm sure it makes it easier in some ways. It was not for me. I tried, I looked. Anyway, if you do believe, and I think that is incredible if you do, and you can cling to that, this was a God wink, right? This was one of those moments where those books are the ones my eyes landed on. And I was like, oh my God, I can totally go, I can get sober. Sober is just as chic as being a drug addict. I grew up in a time when things like the Basketball Diaries were the hot, cool movies. I thought being an addict was cool. I thought it was chic, but I also thought being in recovery was chic. So I sort of could get myself there. So I went to an AA meeting the next day. Well, first I called and I was like, I need a meeting help. And she was like, oh, there's one at noon on the 79th Street workshop. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I can't move. So I went to the one the next day at noon because this is a place that has meetings all day, every day. And I raised my hand and I said I was an alcoholic, and I burst into tears, and I stayed for 4 years. And I stayed for 4 years angry, and I stayed for 4 years without doing the steps, and I stayed for 4 years without a real sponsor, and I stayed for 4 years with only sharing anger, hate, judgment. I got my hand up at every meeting, but it was self-pity and misery spewing out. I wouldn't listen to anybody. I wouldn't take any suggestions because I knew me, I knew how to do this, I got this. But I replaced the alcohol with food. And I would go home and I would binge eat every single night. And I blew up to a size 22, 260 pounds at the end of that 4 years. That's not what sobriety looks like, I gotta tell you. So it was really easy when my sponsor went out to go out too. I used that as an excuse. I took a week off work, I drank, I drugged, I ate, just everything. I was like, ugh, bring it all, bring it on. And I spent the next 4 years drinking like that. My drinking changed. I knew I couldn't keep the daily drinking and keep a good job. I got a good job, so it became binging. And when I binged. Like those kids you see who die in college from it. That was 2 or 3 nights a week. That was lies to my boss when I had a hangover so bad I couldn't make it, or I was still up 36 hours later drinking, Monday morning. What do I say? And I always had things that no man was going to ask for more details. So, it was always something to do with my uterus, whatever, so that nobody would ask me more questions. I was lying. He had known, my boss had known I was sober. I was lying to him. I was lying to everybody. Something happened towards the end of my drinking. I was so miserable. I hated myself so much that I started becoming really interested in the outside stuff, the fancy bags and the shoes. And I was too fat to really get nice clothes, but I would get really expensive shoes. And I quickly went into debt, $50,000 in credit card debt. And my mother had bought me an apartment, which I lied to everybody and said I'd bought. Because I could cover up how horrible I felt by being wealthy. Like, that was the thinking, the show off, the grandiosity they talk about. So to solve the credit card debt problem, I took out a home equity line of credit against the apartment that my mother had bought for me in the amount of not $50,000 to cover the debt, not $100,000 to get back on my feet, $250,000. I spent that in 3 months. And racked up another $50,000. Part of it was because I was so interested in these outsides, I decided renting a house in the Hamptons was that's what you do when you're $250,000 in debt. I needed to show people that I was something. And the only thing I had then was money. Not my money, but money. So I rented a house in the Hamptons. I don't even know how to drive, so I would get a car service out every weekend. And I insisted, this is fucking fantastic. Not only a car service, it had to be a Mercedes. Who the fuck do I think I am? And then the rest of it was spent on booze and on cocaine. And buying booze and cocaine for all my friends. Inviting them out to the house. Never spent a day on the beach. Literally party all night, like all night, all the bad stuff, all going on every weekend. That summer ends. I invite a man into my life who had been a friend for many years. I did not know the kind of man he was, and he was incredibly abusive. The physical is easy. The physical is easy because you can identify it. You can say, that's wrong. It was the gaslighting and the manipulation, and I started to think I was crazy, and I started to lose myself entirely. I believed his version of me. It's only in part his fault, right? I was in a place where this was already happening and where I could allow this to happen for far too long. And one day it was too bad. It got too bad. And I was one of those strong women. Like, no man could ever do that to me, but I let it go on and on and on. But one day, God wink, epiphany, whatever, luck, I thought the only way I'm going to get this man out of my life is to get sober. I know that. I know that if I stop drinking and I take out the drugs, that I can be healthy enough to say, get the fuck out. So I started trying to get sober again, and I did. Kind of. I would get 30 days and then go binge. Get 20 days, then go binge. But I did manage to get him out, which was excellent. I got enough time, get him out. I actually sort of forced him out. I was like, you got a weekend without me here, get the fuck out. And I did that all by text. So he called me the cyber dumper. So that was nice, right? That was appropriate. But I mean, it kind of was, because he was such an asshole. So I get him out. I spend a year trying to come back. Am I trying? Not really. I'm not really trying, because I won't raise my hand in a meeting to count days, because I think the good men in the room will not ask me out if I'm a day counter. So I'm going to hide, and I'm going to lie, and I'm going to... hello, no focus on sobriety. So unsurprising, I didn't get it. My last night drinking was not like a standout night in any way. It was the same old, same old. I drank for probably 72 hours straight, a lot of cocaine to keep that. I mean, you can't do that without cocaine. Literally, it's it's pretty impossible. The quantities, and I had all these people in my house all night, and then I was supposed to go to a christening of a friend, and I was so fucked up I thought I should go, just high and disgusting, and I was like, I gotta go. I gotta show up for her. And my friend Megan was like, you can't go anywhere. You gotta get into bed. And I got into bed, and of course I couldn't sleep. First I cleaned the apartment so that when I did wake up, there would be no evidence. And I lay there, and for the first time ever, I genuinely thought about killing myself. That seemed like an option, a real option, that I could go up to the roof of my building and I could jump and I could do that. But then this little teeny weeny healing voice that had somehow stayed in there from those 4 years in AA said, Don't do it. You have another option. So I picked up the phone and I called an old friend who was still sober, and he said, sit tight. I'm going to bring you some meds to keep you sober, antabuse. So he came over the next day and he gave me antabuse, and I lived on antabuse in fear for a few months. I did not come back to AA. I was terrified that I would be judged, that people would hate me. One day, for whatever reason, I decided to go to a meeting. It was too hard. I was just sitting in my house, afraid of everything, almost agoraphobic, like it was hard to get out of the house to go to the office. And I went to a meeting, and nobody judged me. I mean, I'm sure there was some bitch somewhere who was like, you didn't do it. But, fuck her. Because there were hundreds of others who said, welcome back. You got this. And I chose a sponsor who was a really hard woman. No fucking around at all. You do what I say or you don't have a sponsor. And I was like, this is going to be so hard. You know what she asked me to do? She asked me to call her every morning at 7:30 a.m. and go to a meeting. That's it for 90 days. Oh, so hard. Like, oh my God. That's sarcasm again, kids. Not hard, right? She wasn't asking me a lot. I did that for 90 days. Then we got reading. We started the steps. She asked me to find a higher power. I did a lot of research. I actually really did. I wanted it. But I had to call it the group, because how powerful is this? So even if you have a God and you can't find him right now, or her, this is powerful, to have a room full of people who only want the best for you, who only want you to do this. That, it gives me chills to this day. That is a power greater than me. This is something I could not do on my own, but I could with the help of others. The key was asking for that help and then being willing to take the suggestions to stay sober. I did everything I was told to do for a year, which wasn't really that much. I wasn't asked to give up my fantastic personality. I was still fun. I was still outgoing. I was still all kinds of things. I didn't lose any of me, which had been my fear. I did spend some time mourning the loss of my best friend, alcohol. That was hard. But I say hard. I don't want to use that word. It was uncomfortable. I'm sort of sick and tired of people saying it was so hard. I had to reframe that. It wasn't hard. It's not hard to get sober. You've all done way harder things than getting sober. You have to be uncomfortable. And that's the tough part for us. We can do difficult things. Being uncomfortable inside, that's what we've all been trying to escape, right? So I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable, which if you're a gym buff, you've heard before. And I did. I was uncomfortable. And then little by little, I got more comfortable. Weird. Just like, what? Like suddenly the script in my head wasn't everybody hates you, everybody thinks you're disgusting. The script in my head was, you're okay. I was okay enough to lose the weight. I lost 100 pounds. I quit smoking. I started weightlifting. I got my shit together. I wasn't happy, joyous, and free, but I was okay. I started thinking more and more like maybe someone actually thinks I'm cute. Maybe I deserve something good. Maybe I can take care of, maybe I'm worth taking care of. Mirrors started coming back into my apartment. I could look at myself. Now, that's not to say that I don't have bad days. Today was one of them where I'm just like, oh my God, I'm gross. Everything sucks. Like, I'm a woman. No shit that's going to happen. I'm sure it happens to you guys too. Like, I just, the self-esteem, man, yeah, that happens. But it happens and it goes. Like, now I have an answer. I have a tool to get rid of it. I let myself cry, but then I don't wallow around in my self-pity, because that's not doing anything for anyone. Not me, not others. Anyway, I'll stop there because this attention hog needs a little more time and I've already taken up too much. What I want to say is AA is not the center of my life now, but it is a huge part of my life. I love helping others. Having sponsees has been the most incredible thing for me ever. AA gave me that. It gave me a chance to give back in a way that I never thought I could, to use my shame and my misery to help others. That is a shocking and wonderful thing. And none of that would have been possible without AA. AA isn't my life, but it gave me a foundation to a life. It gave me an arch to walk through to a real life with real friends, self-love, everything I never thought I could have. So with that, I want you to know I love AA. I hope you'll come to it. I hope to see some of your faces there. And I'll give you the giant Japanese toddler.